Okay,
Road trip.
let me bring this meeting to order, and we'll start off with the approval of the agenda.
Before Casey reads out the proposed resolution, the mayor just asked me to remind council and the public regarding the email that our deputy corporate officer sent out last week about agenda deadlines. We're trying hard to get our agendas out per our procedure bylaw to have it in council's and the public's hands by the end of the day on Wednesdays. And in order to do that, I won't go into her whole email. She had a nice long one that she sent out to staff and council. But just a reminder that the deadline for submission is the Monday prior to the meeting. And if there's a report being submitted, it should be submitted to myself 10 days in advance. And if anybody has any questions, they can talk further to Lisa. And this is, just to clarify, this is not only for council staff, but for the public when they're submitting items for council's consideration as well. It will save on staff producing late and on-table agendas, which can be as onerous to prepare as the regular agenda, and it gets the information to everybody in a timely fashion. And with that, Casey will read the resolution for approval of today's agenda.
Okay, I would ask that council approve the agenda for the April 23rd regular council meeting with the addition of the following items. On your on-table agenda, we've got under delegations 6.1 Morgan Quarry, Bowen Island Football Club, regarding the Bix grass field expansion. He's got a presentation to council. Under staff reports, we have Kristen Watson, Deputy Treasurer, regarding the 2012 5-year financial highlights for water and sewer local service areas with a number A through G. Do I need to read those out? No, okay. Item 7.2 is bylaw number 316, the 5-year financial plan. On the on-table agenda, we've included the full version of the bylaw number 316, which was not complete on the late items. Under 8.0 bylaws, Kathy Lalonde, interim chief administrative officer, regarding Greenways Advisory Committee repeal bylaw number 325, 2012. And under new business, we have Councillor Andrew Stone regarding an application for grant funding under the federal government tax grants. And we have a variety of correspondence from the public included in information items.
Oh, sir.
Yeah, I would like to suggest one or two other items on the new business, and it ties in with the letter which we received from former Mayor Bob Turner. I would ask staff to prepare a report on 2 items, and they were mentioned at our town hall meeting on Saturday as well. One report dealing with the Seymour Bay Park, and ideally a report about the court case, because there's obviously a lot of misconception out in the public, and it would be great to have staff put the record straight, because otherwise I cannot really respond to that, or shouldn't, as I've learned. But somebody has to.
Yeah, I've spoken to the mayor already about those 2 items, and have spoken to our manager of engineering about preparing a report about Seymour Bay. And we'll speak further about the other item, but definitely.
Good.
So could we put that on the agenda as 4.7, follow up on town hall?
Certainly.
I didn't know whether that is it or we'll talk about.
Well, I think that would be it. I mean, the reports itself are already underway. We can talk about it further later in the agenda.
And I'd just like to add one item to the agenda, and I don't know whether I should add in call a questionnaire with the tax notices.
Question on what?
Tax notices. That question, I'll speak to it when I get to that agenda. We're wanting to survey the public on some issues.
Any other additions? Can we have a motion to?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Unanimous?
Our next item of business is adoption of the March 26, 2012 regular council minutes, meeting minutes.
Adoption.
I second that.
Any changes, amendments,
This is
omissions?
the second time they've been.
I'm just checking.
Just have a question. We made obviously a resolution. What's the fate of that resolution? Do we have to rescind that? It was a resolution about that we would within 2 weeks or something.
Yes, it is probably regarding the ferry marshalling.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it would be a good
because-
idea to rescind that resolution. I could bring something forward to our next council agenda, or we could do it today. And
Okay.
But, yeah.
So when should we do that?
We could, actually, as soon as we approve the agenda today, we could do it right away, so we have it on.
We've done
the
it,
plate.
we've approved it.
Okay, then I would ask that council rescind.
Vote on it.
Yep, no, we didn't.
No, yeah.
Okay, so the minutes are okay except for,
The minutes are okay.
okay. All those in favor of the minutes? Second? Or is,
Okay, I would ask, and this is relating to resolution 12054 on page 3 of your 3 and 4 of your March 26 minutes, and I would ask that council rescind off the fly here, the second paragraph of that resolution, which is that within 2 weeks of the close of the public meeting, council adopt a ferry marshalling plan that will be incorporated into further development in South Cove.
any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous?
Our next item of business is Mayor Adelar regarding the 2012 strategic plan.
The strategic plan is attached to your agenda, the yellow copy. And I am presuming that there's no further interest in debating it. But first we have to have a mover for this. We have a mover for adoption of the strategic plan. Second, Tim.
But I think it's a great thing. What it doesn't tell us right now, what are our priorities now towards some of those strategic items? Will we address it today or next?
Maybe not today because we've got a full day, but
Yeah.
once we have the strategic plan in place, we're going to prioritize 2 or 3 items that we can do together
Yeah.
and move forward.
I'm really wondering about the whole framing of that question, because if you look at this, which is 2012-17 outcomes, essentially it shows a list of dependencies. Everything is dependent on one another, right?
Yeah,
So in essence, what we have to do is figure out a work plan,
yeah.
like with timelines and so on. So I don't know whether or not it's a matter of choosing priorities, because the priorities have been determined, and the sequence in which the rough sequence has been determined, and we just have to map it out.
I think it's the interconnectivity of all 3 items which causes us to have to prioritize things. Now, whether it's everybody's satisfied with the way that it's set out, or whether we actually have to put some things aside and move other things forward, I think that's what Councillor Dunce is trying to
Okay.
say.
Is that basically not something that advice from staff would inform us on?
Yeah, but up to this date, up to this very minute, we've been dealing with matters which have been beyond our interest per se. And now we're, hopefully with the passing of the strategic plan, we'll be moving forward with our agenda. So that's the idea.
And then following that point, we will be getting.
We'll be strategizing as to what we
some kind
should.
of information from staff as to how
Well,
and what's realistically practical.
and what my thinking on that, for what it's worth, is that once we have a strategic plan in place, it will then have a limited set of things to talk about in council meetings, because we will be dependent on staff for reports and information as to how we move ahead on the various topics that we've prioritized. And I'm hoping that at some stage in the next few months, that once we finalize the things that we've got to finalize, that we can then say to staff, you know, instead of having a meeting every 2 weeks, maybe we'll have a meeting in 3 weeks, so that you've got sufficient time to put things together for us to actually discuss moving ahead. That's just my take on what I think we need to do. We need to allow staff to do the things that they're supposed to be doing, as opposed to our wants and desires to have meetings every week or every second week or whatever. So, Allison,
I just two specifics under community security. I'm taking it as a given that fire protection services includes the looking at the fire hall under the stewardship column. Because we haven't got any
we have
detail underneath there, and also that emergency measures would include the boat launch, which is over under fiscal. These two are under the fiscal issues list, so I'm hoping that they are going to actually forward to talk as subsets of those two items.
Council members, I think we're going to move forward on these things. Once we've got the plan in place, we will move forward. And that's the whole idea. And we'll move forward on all these topics, because these are really subtopics off the main topic. Right?
I just want to clarify that people weren't saying.
Councilor Dunstan.
Maybe I would say we all agree that the surplus of the community lands shall be developed. In what way we haven't decided yet. And the last decision we made was to ask for proposal calls. And we cannot really ask for proposals unless we have rezoned or given an indication what will this village be. So that in itself is a very, very demanding job. And so far, when we started our term, actually before we got elected, we said maybe we leave the lower cove and the unresolved ferry marshalling out. Now it seems we have decided or not decided, or maybe we should decide, is that part of our priority? And now we come to priority. We could leave it out, but if we want to deal with it, we better deal with it very soon.
Yes.
Same thing. If we do that, then we have a few other issues. We have to decide about the capacity of the sewer plant, which can be tripled, but that needs to be done. And the associated extension of the local service area. So there is a lot of housekeeping, and we have to somehow get started on that.
Yes.
Because otherwise we are stymied in the end.
Yes, no, and that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that once we have our plan in place, we can get started on the nitty-gritty of doing these things, and everything, Councillor Dunst, is tied in with everything else.
Good.
Whether it's the lower cove or the upper cove, I mean, where does the water and the sewer come in, go down, is collected, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, all these things are part and parcel. And why would you talk about ferry marshaling if you couldn't maybe make use of digging up the road by putting in some utilities? You know, these are all sort of things that come to mind almost immediately. So all I'm saying is, let's get the strategic plan in place, and then we can start dealing with the hard things that we have to make decisions on.
To have the strategic plan in place means we have to say, right now, we have to ratify that or finally adopt it?
Adopt it.
Okay, and then when will we start with those other hard issues thereafter?
2 weeks from now.
Okay. Is that,
Then we
because
can have a
we
debate
have
on-
now a different ruling as to what is on the agenda. Will we commit during this meeting already to put timing and action for the surplus, for the community land on the agenda?
No, I think we need to, I think we need to spend time during a council meeting, having an open discussion, having everybody put their 2 cents worth in as to how to prioritize and how to deal with the surplus land, but in context of the increased sewer, increased water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these things are tied in as one. How we ask staff to deal with this is another question, one which I think we should give some time to when we've gotten rid of all the stuff that's sort of overweighing our deliberations.
Councillor Dunn, are you suggesting at our next council meeting, we dedicate time to deal with next steps?
Yes.
Next
Because you cannot deal with a project like that, it's complex,
Oh, yeah.
without having what we call in our industry a critical plan, critical time.
So critical path.
Critical plan, yeah. Pass, and there even a week or 2 matters. So the sooner, and that I call it a list of priorities, but the priorities have to be agreed on, and then we have to have the critical path.
A critical path like that.
Yes. So,
Yeah,
that's for
no,
one.
Yeah.
okay, I have your point.
I was just going to partly sort of agree with what you were saying, and it's basically my hope that we, and I have actually spoken to some senior developer finance people in Vancouver about the possibility of coming over here to conduct a round table workshop with us regarding the surplus lands, regarding the aspects of zoning, regarding lower code, upper code, priorities of the actual lot packages themselves, etc. And at this point in time, I've had a sort of a commitment from about 8 potential people who would be prepared to do this. I'm tentatively thinking that this is something that we will do somewhere around about the 2nd week of June, with a view that in our own sort of casual discussion about this, that we're aiming at an RFP around about September. So this would sort of help towards that. And in regard to your discussion about rezoning and so forth, yeah, that's a big issue. According to some of the people I've talked to, including David Podmore, rezoning itself isn't, prior to putting the lands out for an RFP, isn't as important as the commitment that is going to be part of the package. So, I mean, those are things that we don't have a drop dead timetable to have to do a certain amount of things. We just have to make the decisions as to what.
And I would say if we wait for that meeting in June, it's already too late.
Well, we may be able to move it up. I think we need to just.
I want to be on record, if we don't get clarity over that, all other timelines, and they get tighter and tighter, will be impossible to achieve. As long as we are, as you all understand that.
I think we all understand it.
And the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
I is of the essence.
Did you want to say anything, Councillor Morris?
I just wanted to say that by adopting the strategic plan, which is the outcomes, then we now can go forward with figuring out how we get from today
Here to there.
to the outcome, and the timelines and the money involved, the resources involved, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a bit of a process for the Snugcoat revitalization that's on page 8 of the agenda packet, which does lay it out, but we haven't, that's not flushed out enough. And
further to moving the process along and as well as the public process that will necessarily be involved here, I'd like to suggest that council invite public forums to come to the next meeting and make a brief presentation about the approach that they have in terms of the public decision-making process.
Okay, can you hold that thought
Yeah.
for a minute? Eric, do you want to say anything? Okay. Andrew, did you
No,
want to say
I'm
anything?
fine.
I'm going to call a vote for the strategic plan. All those in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. Tim, you want to?
Yeah, I just think it would be of interest to council to see what this public forums process is all about in terms of moving forward. Maybe something we want to incorporate into what we're doing. We may not, but I think a presentation and discussion around the table would be valuable.
Just Catherine.
Coordinate that, that'd be coordinate with Councillor Morris.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So next topic
Is we have